In a phrase, that person is not afraid of shaking tables when the tables must be shaken. And if the drinks on the table should spill on people, they don't really care.
The critic is like she changed. She was an independent, confident woman.
Now
she's married.
Seemingly docile. And for the longest time, I gloried in it.
The Rukh-Shana today deals with people differently.
Oh, yeah.
More gentle in dealing with people.
Oh, yeah. The best place for refinement is marriage, you know. But I like the version that I'm seeing.
When you do things that risk your life, people will celebrate you, but because they are not the one bearing the cost of it.
Amen.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well.
Long time?
Really, it's just 2 episodes, I think.
2 episodes. That's forever.
Yeah,
Because they haven't been weekly.
You're right. It has been a while.
Yeah.
But it's good to be back with you. It's good to be back with you.
And what's been your experience with the past couple of episodes?
It's been an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Obviously, a little bit of change is never easy.
Yeah.
Initially, because I was accustomed to our conversations just being you and I in our studio space alone. But with the guests that we've had and the team growing a little bit, it's different. It's different, but I guess it's a process of growth as well.
Yeah.
Whenever you're growing or things are changing, they're not very comfortable initially.
Yeah.
But it helps to just focus on the positive side.
Yeah.
And the positive side, of course, has been twofold. With the guests, we get to hear different perspectives.
Yeah.
Not so different from our perspectives, but different nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even as the people that watch the podcast are exposed to new thoughts and different thoughts, even for us, or for me, I'll speak for myself, it's always interesting either hearing certain thoughts that you've held reinforced by someone else or even expounded on, so I get insights. The last 2 episodes have been really eye-opening for me as well. Deeper insights into some things that I sort of knew but wasn't paying that much attention to. I suppose because my area of growth was in another space. But yes, it has been quite exciting. Of course, it was also exciting because the first 2 guests that we had are people that are close to us. I hadn't spoken to, I was going to say Benji, I hadn't spoken to Mwami Mwina in a very, very long time. So it was interesting just listening to him and also seeing his evolution as well. And
And I think it's indeed powerful having third parties come in, because if it is husband and wife, one may even come to think these guys are scripting it and claiming it's unscripted. When you have a third party who has to come for the first time and hear what comes out, and it bears witness. But I think what is powerful for me as well is the power of doing work that is rooted in truth, not from some textbook. Is that if any vessel shows up among you that is aligned to truth, you'll be aligned.
There'll be agreement in some shape or form or alignment.
Right? And that's sort of a validation.
Yeah. That's actually really powerful, because it's very easy. And I know as human beings, we generally have this thought that, you know what, that works for you guys. It's for you. I'll figure out what works for me. And to some extent, that might actually be right. But when what we're talking about are issues that are based on truth, then it's not exclusive to one couple.
Yeah.
It's just that how it manifests might be exclusive to one couple, or what seems to be, what's magnified might be more in one couple vis-a-vis another, because we are different spaces in our lives. But if it is truth, you will still have it witnessed in someone else. So just having Rachel on the most recent podcast, and she was talking a lot about putting self aside. And putting self aside is fundamental to the idea of oneness. You can't have self in oneness, because oneness speaks of two becoming one. But just hearing her talk about self and her experience and her experience in their marriage and stuff, for me, juxtaposing that against the oneness that we've been speaking a lot about, but hearing it from a different angle was very, very powerful. Because it's very easy to just keep hearing oneness, 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 and it doesn't make sense, because for the person who's watching, they may not really be sure what the lack of oneness looks like. But when you listen to Rachel, you can clearly see what the lack of oneness can look like, but also the effect it can have on a marriage, on the people in the marriage. But also, more importantly, and I love the lessons, and I love the victories more, because when people share about victories, when Rachel shared about her victory, even though it took 7 years, for me it was encouraging in the sense that it re-emphasizes the fact that nothing is impossible. It doesn't matter how long it has taken. It is not impossible. Although, what it also points to is that it doesn't have to take that long. It really doesn't have to take that long. Why it would take that long is dependent on how quickly you respond to the prompting of the Spirit, or whatever it is that God is telling you that you need to adjust yourself to. So in Rachel's case, 7 years. Doesn't have to take 7 years.
Well, and I think someone hinted about there are people who approach this marriage thing like marriage is different. There's no formula to it. There's nothing this. And while I can appreciate where they're coming from, I also feel it's not completely true, right? And I think at the heart of it all is that we are dealing with a complex problem, right? The problem of marriage is not the problem of I don't have money for food, right? It's not the problem my wife or husband doesn't return my phone calls. It is a bit of a complex problem. It has nuances, right? It involves your upbringing. It involves your gender. It involves your education. It involves your intelligence.
Involves your level of faith.
Involves your faith. So there are so many moving parts, and it creates a complex problem, and it's easy for someone to conclude that can't be solved, right? But my hope in such things is looking at what humanity has been able to solve, right? If you think about germ theory, right? Before they discovered the theory around germs, people used to die of germs and no one knew what was going on, right? And then people labeled it a certain demon or certain something else, until a certain man discovered, wait, they are germs, and you can touch them when you touch on substances, but you can wash them off. And that revision of germ theory, they managed to pasteurize milk so it can stay longer. People stopped dying because of that enlightenment. But that enlightenment of discovering the germs that were killing people. Now you could think of, in a spirit realm, think of the germs as a little foxes we talk about, right? There are little foxes there that you don't know about, right? And I hope the different conversations we have, and also even the guests that come in, they're pointing out different little foxes. And if you start to pay attention, you may actually find deliverance. But at the back of this thing, I feel marriage was God's plan.
Absolutely.
Right? And I don't think when God was coming up with marriage, he said, I'm coming up with an impossible thing. right? And but at the same time, when you think about the struggle of marriage, it's not different from the struggle of the individual to walk righteous, right? When God gave the children of Israel the law, he wanted them to walk according to the law. It was the blueprint of how they could walk. But in their own strength, they could not be righteous, right? So what does God do? God sacrificed his son, and we started to become righteous by faith. But he also gave us the Holy Spirit
to be the constant,
to bring out the righteousness in us, to even produce good fruit. And I think you start to see, if you borrow that analogy, you start to see it's not far from marriage, right? That the same God who created marriage is the same God who empowers us to do it the right way, right? So the complexity of most people trying to do marriage the same
outside
way
of God.
People try to be righteous in the law.
Yeah.
You see? Yeah. But they're trying to be righteous in the law, but their nature is contrary against them.
So there's a constant struggle. There's a constant fight.
Yes. That in your own flesh you cannot be righteous, right? But in the empowerment of the Spirit of God, you can do all things. Yeah.
It's interesting that it's not that often that we juxtapose the marriage walk, I'll call it the marriage walk, with the righteousness, with the walk of righteousness. Yeah. We actually look at them as totally separate. Yeah. And I think it is probably because, I don't know. Yeah. Why do we look at them as separate issues? Maybe it's because we approach marriage forgetting or not alive to the fact that it is part of God's grand plan.
No, I think the reason we don't connect it is because we don't see the connection.
Okay.
And that's
why don't we see the connection?
The reason why pastors tend to bring connections, reconcile the word to our day-to-day life. So they are giftings to men to be able to connect pathways. Right?
Okay.
Yes, that's why when you find our journey on the knowledge of God, take for example, Paul wrote the letters explaining people about justification by faith.
Yeah.
Right? Now, those things are not straightforward to everyone. But Paul had the revelation and he managed to deliver.
Explain it in a way that they would actually understand.
Because he had the revelation, he could explain it. You see? Now, not everyone saw it. You see? And that's the place why we spread the gospel. The gospel is like this light, an illumination, that some people saw the light. And when you see it, you also go and carry it on further. It's like a fire. You light your fire and go light another's fire until it goes on. Yeah. Right? But as further it goes away, sometimes it loses its luminance. Right? It becomes a bit dim. And that's why sometimes you need a revival. A new fire to come into place and rekindle old flames. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. Interesting. Insightful.
Yes, insightful.
The moment you looked smitten by your husband.
But when am I never? When am I never? I'm just always amazed at the insights that you get.
But you see, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Even doing this podcast, we don't do it in our strength. If we're doing the podcast in our strength, would be for us to do some reading. What are we going to talk about? And then come up with a script. No. But the one thing we learn to do is to surrender our vessels.
And follow the leading.
So that the Spirit of God may minister through us. And when you hear people share certain testimonies, I met a lady yesterday I told you about. I was taking a walk and the lady drove past me. But a little ahead of me, she stopped her car and got out to look what was behind in her car. She had things that were banging. And as she steps out to look at the things at the back of her car, she says, "Wait, are you Mr. Kitaka?" Right? And then she's like, "Wow, you guys have blessed me." They're like, "Rukh-Shana, that's me." So she connected with all the struggles on your side. She was like,
basically would see herself in me and stuff. Yeah.
And amidst all these critics who come up and say, Mr. Kitaka, make your wife look terrible as though you're a saint, a lady comes and says, wait, in Rukh-Shana's weaknesses, I managed to see myself.
And she's just one of so many.
Yes. And after that encounter, she said, this was divine, even just to that encounter. Yeah. To imagine that encounter was triggered by things banging in her car.
Which may not even have really been there.
Yes.
They could have been there. They could have been there, but also it was generally the reason why she ended up stopping.
Thank you.
And then saw you walking.
And that's something I've started to realize about life, is that sometimes we are not so wired strongly with God. For us to tell you, for example, go take Felix food, right? He may tell you, if he said that, you wouldn't hear it.
No.
So what he may do, he may actually cause you to just say, check on Felix. You see? Because you can understand check on Felix. I haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah.
And then you call up Felix, and then you discover he has no food.
Yeah, or he's unwell.
Or he's unwell.
Yeah.
Right? But God uses that thing that is closer to you. Of course, he speaks in various ways, but I've noticed a certain pattern of the Lord's speech where he uses something that is does not make sense to you. Like he gives you one piece of the puzzle, right? And when you go there, you see, it's like, and I always reference this when I talked about Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Yes. God sent Jeremiah to go to the potter's house. And he said, I'll call you to hear my word. Jeremiah goes to the potter's house and sees the potter. And he sees the potter, he managed to hear God. You see? With the potter, he managed to hear God. Right? And that's the same thing with that lady. Her potter was just a banging in the car. But when she went in the car, she saw Mr. Kitaka. And she's like, are you Mr. Kitaka? I was like, yeah, ma'am. Right? But the reason I went here was her testament on how a podcast has blessed her could not have been that we're doing a podcast in our strength. You see? That's true. Why I'm always intrigued by the critics, right? I'm intrigued by the critics because you criticize the people who do their best to not be in the podcast. You see? In the sense that our entire labors is we try to not even think about what we're going to speak about. We try to prepare our vessels, right? We've been worshiping and praying before we start this work. And then someone is coming and saying, Felix, you're speaking too much. I want you to let Shan speak. And I'm like, don't you see? It is not about the individual, right? It's not about the individual. The goal is for us to surrender ourselves, you see? And so when I hear those testimonies, I see the fruit of the strategy we took. Yeah. You see, that will not minister from our own minds. We've read a great deal of things. We've meditated on a great deal of things. But the free flow of the conversation, I've come to realize, allows truth to manifest. Because
absolutely,
if you come with, and this is interesting, we've been talking about how it may not be straightforward for God, for example, tell that lady, Mr. Kitaka is there. You see? Because you're speaking from one realm to another, the translation is not straightforward.
Yeah.
So
the language is different. The language is different.
Brilliant. The language is different, right? But it was easier to share something that was closer. You see? Now, imagine if we had the script. How hard is it for the Spirit of God to redirect us?
How hard? It's impossible. I don't know about you. I think you're a lot more flexible than me. But when I have a script, I don't deviate off script.
So
I have to stick to script.
So it's that free flow that allows you to be like, if the wind blows you, you move.
You move.
You see? And someone said, Felix, when we hosted Rachel, Felix, stop interrupting Rachel as she speaks.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you understand when someone speaks and I hear something in my spirit,
it has to come out
I
in
want
that
to
moment,
share it.
because you lose
Yes,
it.
because it's what you never know where it's taking us.
Yeah.
You see? Now, someone may like the end of the podcast and has a problem in my interruption, but doesn't know the interruption may be the building block that led that conversation to one's deliverance.
But they cannot know.
And that's why we speak. I was telling you about Paul. They with revelation speak that everyone else can sit through their experience.
And one of the beautiful things that I love about the fact that it's not scripted, even though I resisted the not scripting right from the word go, but thankfully I yielded, is the fact that half the things, if not 3/4 of the things that we talk about, 3/4 of the things that we talk about, especially that the challenges that we deal with, would never come out in a script.
Yeah.
They would never come out in a script.
Oh, yes.
Because the default setting...
It's to cover yourself.
Exactly. That is the default setting.
Yeah.
Cover yourself, look good, reveal only as much as you're comfortable revealing, because you don't want to look like such a terrible person. And yet it is in the unscripting and laying yourself bare and not considering yourself that other people are able to actually identify and even recognize that, wait a minute, this is what I'm dealing with. And if it's a character issue, it is very easy for us to rationalize and make peace with our character flaws and walk with them and think, this is who I am, this is how I was made to be. But when you hear someone else on the podcast sharing similar thing, and you're seeing the negative side of it, you're like, wait a minute, this is so me. And it can actually be fixed, in quotes. I don't have to accept this as that's just how I am. I just walk away from an argument, you know, because it was interesting also when I shared about the fact how I used to deal with conflict. There's still a bit of residue. Still a bit of residue, but there's definitely been a lot of progress. And it was so interesting. And so we have different platforms. We have the YouTube, and then certain clips on TikTok and stuff. But even to see people on TikTok say, oh my God, that's exactly me. That's how I deal with conflict. I just walk away. I don't want to address it and stuff like that. And then they realize that, wait, this is someone who was dealing with the very same situation I was dealing with, and they've managed to overcome it. So then the next question is, how did they manage to overcome it? And in being able to share how we overcome some of the challenges that we deal with, one realizes there's redemption. There's a solution. You don't have to accept that that's just how you are. So I think for me, sometimes, not even sometimes, let me be honest, I look at some comments and sometimes I'm angry. Sometimes I'm really sad. And I'm like, Lord, how do they not see it? How do they not see it? But then I'm like, you know what, God, we'll just keep doing what we are led to do. Those that see it and pick it up, and hopefully.
But I saw over the weekend, I got a good perspective into the critics. Sometimes the critics, because they know in part, and then they speak, and sometimes they even use they quote the Spirit. I had the Spirit say. Sometimes they say things and you're like, no, you don't have the full picture. Like there's a gentleman who wrote recently and talked about how I didn't let you speak, right? And I was like, did you know she had a migraine throughout the entire podcast, right? And so you start to realize, wisdom would say you've perceived something. Yes, it could be right, but it could be wrong. You see, you're not God that when you see a picture you know exactly the state of things. Right? And that's what perception is. Perception is a guess and a guesstimate right? And you add in common sense and you get a sense of a picture of what's going on. But there's a certain arrogance, for lack of a better word, where you feel something and you go write it, right? What I would do is, personally, I would say perhaps communicate in a way, leaving room a question for clarity. This is what I see, but I could be wrong. Can you help me clarify?
Yeah, and there have been a few people who've actually taken that approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I liked about this weekend, I realized the biggest risk for people who are used of God to be a blessing for people, the biggest enemy is hubris, pride. So the critics offer sort of a thorn in the flesh experience, right? Paul talked about as God sent a servant of Satan to buffet him, right? Yes. And when he inquired of the Lord, God told him, my grace is sufficient, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. So I think the critics, with either discomfort, is what reminds us to carry. It's like the cross, the reminder of the cross you carry, right? But that maintains a certain sense of humility.
Yeah. But I think they also, in some regard, get you to be introspective.
That's
and
true.
Just check.
That's true.
Is it possible? Could I be missing something?
Yeah.
Could I be missing something? Could I be missing something? And I think that's a beautiful thing, because we're human beings, so we could be missing something. Yeah. I think the downside, though, and it takes a lot. It takes character to say, could I be missing something, and to check yourself. Yeah. The scary part, though, is sometimes when you hear so many negative voices, those voices can actually, it's like taking too much sugar. Yeah. And you shouldn't be taking too much sugar. Yeah. It can be more harmful than anything. Yeah. So you have to have a certain, I don't know what it is. I don't want to call it a shock absorber. Yeah. Otherwise, you can start hearing so many negative things. Yeah. They get into your system, and then they start becoming truth. Yeah. They actually start affecting how you think.
We've been talking about the similarities between marriage and man. Yeah. But this was what happened in Genesis.
Yes. Right from the beginning.
Adam and Eve had a podcast. And the devil came in the comments and typed, did he say? You see? And the devil is crafty. Right?
Just tweaks a bit.
Yes, he actually leverages something that he uses something that's believable. You see, it's known that Adam and Eve were stupid. But the devil sort of brought a narrative that had a believability to it, because he rooted it in what was there. Because God told them, you can eat of the tree, but of this tree don't touch.
You can eat anything in the garden, yes.
Yeah, but show the knowledge of good and evil, don't touch that.
It.
Right? The devil says, no. What he's trying to do to you is to
get you to question.
You see?
What you had and what you know, actually. Yes. Not what you had, what you know.
Yes. So he brought the discord between man and God. And I've seen similar devils in our comments bringing discord between husband and wife. Yeah. You see? And there's a certain wisdom to discern the voice of truth and the voice of darkness. And where I draw the line, the voice of truth is not an attacking voice. For God did not send his son into the world to condemn it, but through him the world may be saved. Yeah. You see? It was not salvation through condemnation. Now, there are people we've had people have given us feedback. Yeah. But they deliver their feedback with such love and like, okay, that's really kind of them, the way they say. They actually said it well. That's actually good food for thought. Yeah. But there's one who you see is actually trying to attack at you, right? Or separating anyone who says something that in the end of it,
it's going to lead to
paints a picture of us acting against one another. I don't believe that voice. Because a couple that has had the audacity to align and speak publicly about their marriage for the blessing of other marriages, and for you, what you think to do is to show them how the husband is terrible against the wife. You see? If that is the fact, then perhaps pray for them. Right? Pray for them that God may help them be better. Because what you see as an imperfection is blessing people.
Yeah.
There are people out there who are blessed. There are people who are truly blessed and their lives are transformed by the work we are doing.
If anything, and this is just me speaking as me, if anything, you should not be more concerned about the couple than the masses.
Thank you.
You know, the couple can sort their issues out, you know. But what's interesting about the aim of the devil is it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. I mean, he was bold enough to, after Jesus' 40 days of fasting, to go and tempt God himself.
Yeah.
You know, he really
Thank
was.
you.
Just by a slight tweak.
And he used the word.
He used the word.
Yes.
That's the thing. He actually used the word.
Yeah.
And we see that still happening.
Yes.
And I think for me, initially, I would get like really riled.
Yeah.
And then I started being reminded, but we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Thank you.
It is not flesh and blood. Yes, the comment has come through flesh, but there's something or someone behind them. So, musasire.
Yeah.
I still get riled a bit, but sometimes I'm like, well, I look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
I look at the bigger picture. But I'd be lying if sometimes I haven't said, but now this thing they are saying. You know, then I have to remind myself, really, Shan, really, really. Yeah, so, yeah.
But, yes, and then something that came to mind is people need to understand that, and I think some people don't see it. We started this podcast after 1 year in marriage. So our podcast is not founded on experience.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
To experience, we'd have no business having a podcast.
Our podcast is founded in one, faith in God, right? That God can use these vessels to minister to his people. The faith in the fact that for marriage to work requires God, not experience, right? But also, because if it's about God, then it's not an experience issue.
No.
Yes, if we can tell you how we submitted to God to use us in our marriage and even in our ministry, right? But it also, on the other part, it is the audacity on our part. The audacity that we're going to speak candidly, honestly, day in and day out. That takes a certain strength, right? Now, we are not completed. We're not perfected in this marriage journey yet.
Absolutely not.
Right? But we have certain values that make our podcast work, but we also having a certain evolution.
Yes.
And a case in point, we were discussing recently about how we made great progress in reducing conflicts in our marriage.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we had those sort of conflicts where we are heading on one another and we take a day.
We even go to bed without talking to each other.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
And we've learned how to manage and maintain peace. But a part of me felt that we have not perfected our communication.
True.
Right? Because some of the ways to peace have been in silence. Not negative silence, but just make peace. Right? But when you make peace doesn't mean the mind has reconciled. You see, there's a place of forgiveness, right? Where you forgive for the sake of it, just cut the cord. For love, just cut the cord. you've been hurt, just don't take offense.
Yeah.
Right? But there's a place where you grow in communication, where you can tell someone, this hurt a bit, and they're able to understand you, and that conversation will go peaceably.
And then you'll be able to move on from there.
Yes, and that's a journey I think we are getting on.
I think that's like the next level where we're at.
Yes.
And I think for me that is significant progress.
Yeah.
Significant progress. The trick is just not lingering in that space for a little bit too long.
Which one?
Where we're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's also, I can't speak for you, I can only speak for myself. There's also a risk, because I've seen it in me quite a bit. There's a risk of when I conquer one mountain and I'm on to the next higher mountain, as long as I have climbed it a little bit, it's very easy for me to bask in the glory of that space and stay there for a little longer and forget that the journey still has to continue. Yeah. Of course, there's value in looking back and seeing how far you've come. But it's more important to look at how much farther you have to go and celebrate where you came from. But then say, you know what? I need to keep up the momentum. Because the truth is, the devil doesn't take a break. He'll change his tactics slightly. You know? So for example, the things that used to offend me before don't offend me anymore. But it doesn't mean that I don't get offended. The nature of offense has morphed a little bit. And it's more subtle. And it might actually even be more dangerous. Because while now I may not necessarily go into silent mode or walk away, I may keep things in my mind a little longer. And if I keep them in my mind a little longer, they're going to, it's like having a wound. If you don't treat it, it festers. And then when it rots, for lack of a better word, that sounds really gross, it might take a lot more to actually deal with it. So it's just being alive to the fact that the enemy doesn't take a break. He really doesn't take a break. And you don't have the luxury of just looking back at the past and celebrating your past wins.
Yes, and I think what's fascinating is to also be conscious that as the devil fights you one way, he will adapt his strategy, right, and attack you from a different angle, right? And I think what could be the problem with many people, and this extends beyond marriage, but also extends into life. Most people want to get the playbook. Tell me what I need to do. But they're forgetting that some things are supposed to be a lifestyle. So what we're talking about is continuous improvement. Yes, there's a certain level we've been on. We've sort of made progress there. But now, can we tackle another matter? Now, some people, such things disturb them. They're like, I've been conquering this. I felt I was now succeeding. Now you're taking me to start again in a new journey, right? That's why you find there are people who have gone to university and studied a course, and they've not gone for any other certification after that, right? They've found content and they just want to find a job with that. But the world around them is shifting, right? Today you're in the age of AI, right? What is the effect of that AI for the skills you got in university 10, 20 years ago?
20 years ago.
Right? Now, if you don't make it a habit to make knowledge, and that's, I think, part of the issue with our education systems as well, because they teach us not how to become lifelong learners. They teach us how to learn particular things.
And for a particular reason.
Thank you. So that's why many people, after they finish exams, they even tear the books.
They're not going to think about reading
that is
again.
Done, right? But the issue of life should be a lifelong learner. So your journey is continuous. You're continuous. I like the words Paul says, his mercies are new every morning. That speaks to me about the nature of God, the daily newness of his nature, but also takes me to something else. I remember the first time I realized the nature of a river, that the river is constantly flowing. The river is constantly flowing. Just imagine how long the river Nile has been flowing. It's possible from the beginning of time it has been flowing. I don't know, but it has been flowing. And it still flows. It's fresh every day. The water that you see running today is not the same water you see running tomorrow. And I think that's ought to be the nature of our lives. That there is a certain newness in you. The people you talk to and today is the same people from yesterday. There's a problem. There's a problem. A friend of mine likes to say that the evidence of life is growth.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yes. That the evidence of life is growth. That each life coming into you every day should impact how you turn out. You see? And I think that is the same thing about marriage. That marriage, I think, requires a certain intentionality on a daily basis. But think about this. Yeah. We are intentional about ourselves on a daily basis. You try to think about which new hairstyle you pick up. Right?
I don't think that's entirely true for me right now. I found something that works as far as my hair is concerned, and I stuck with it.
Yes. I think your reasons are different.
Yeah. But for the most part, yes, you're always looking for something new, something fresh.
People trying to see how do I do this differently. People trying to go, how do I go up in my employment? How do I get a promotion?
How do I grow in my career?
Right? How do I increase my income?
How do I become a better parent?
Yes, how do I deal with this child and stuff like that? So daily you're figuring out how to solutions around these things.
Yeah.
But then suddenly we want our marriage to just work, right? And if it's not working, you know what, this thing's not working. I better bail out. And that's why I think, I don't say bailing out marriage is really sad, right? But at the same time, some people bail out because the foundation is also wrong. Yeah. And that's the worst part, is that as we advocate that the way to do marriage is actually by God guiding you through it. But a gentleman, the camera guy, asked me earlier today that what about the singles? But even the singles have to begin with God even before they get into it.
That's absolutely true.
That God starts the journey. Paul was talking to the Philippians and says, he that started a good work in you shall carry it.
Be faithful to complete it.
You see? So it is the one who begins. The confidence is the one who began being able to carry it on. Now, unfortunately, many people bring God into the picture
after the fact. When things start falling up, when things start shaking, that's when God comes into the picture.
Or maybe they just discover God when they're already married, right?
Yeah.
So now they have
two spurts of growth happening at the same time.
Yes, but they already got the parts. You see, if you were to prepare a meal, right, and you knew the meal you wanted to prepare, you will actually go to the market and pick out the right items and ingredients that are perfect for that meal.
True.
Right? But there are people who picked ingredients not knowing they actually have to prepare a certain kind of meal. You see? There are people who didn't know they had to prepare a certain kind of meal. So they end up in marriage and they're like, wait, I think I should have needed a bit of celery. Right? They're like, oh, I wish I had a bit of, as I wouldn't say Royco, I was like, I'll give them an ad, but so be it. And I should have had a bit of Royco here, right? But then, you're already inside. You've already picked the ingredients. Now here, you need to be resourceful.
Yeah.
You see, it requires more effort, resourcefulness, to get this thing to work that you did not
consider
in the beginning, right? So, but if you start a journey with God, God can tell you, no, for marriage, first get this celery. That may be a part of your character to deal with. Maybe like, but you need cucumber. telling the nature of person you need. You may need carrots because of maybe the purpose for which your life is about. So the ingredients you pick align to the purpose for your life and even the growth that is required in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
See?
Yeah. But also because you know, because of the meal that you're going to prepare.
Yeah.
And because of the meal that you're going to prepare, you will probably, no, you definitely need God.
Thank you.
Actually, because
He knows the meal you're going to prepare.
He knows the meal you're going to prepare and why you need to prepare this meal.
Thank you.
Now, because he knows why you need to prepare this meal and the nature of the meal that you need to prepare, then it is only fitting that he helps you along the entire journey. He actually needs to help you. Even before you get to the point of buying the ingredients. Because if you go to try and buy these ingredients on your own, you're going to buy the wrong ingredients.
Thank you.
Because even you yourself need to first be sorted out before you actually go to the market. Otherwise, you'll go to the market and you'll be looking for the cheapest onions because you're trying to save money.
Thank you.
You know, or you're like, no, I don't think this is going to work for me. I don't think this is going to work for me. Basically, you just have to go back to the basics.
I had a story of a certain gentleman. He was living with his father and siblings. But I think his wife was a bit uncomfortable and stuff. So I decided, you know what? He wasn't in the country. So I decided to build another house.
Who, the man or the woman built a house?
The man decided to build a house.
Okay.
So the man's family was there.
Okay.
So he told his dad and brothers to help him buy land. And they bought a piece of land for him. And then he asked them to help him oversee the construction of the house and everything.
But he had a wife?
He had a wife.
Okay.
And in the end, he actually thanked them for the house and then told them that house is yours.
Wow. Imagine if
Now,
they had been cutting
it turned
corners.
out they had cut a bit of corners.
They cut corners.
You see? So it is the same element when you're getting into marriage and you don't know what that marriage is for you. Like you don't know what the purpose of that marriage is. So which means you're going to pick things that may not even be the right quality you need to pick because you're focusing on certain enjawulo gy'okubako essaawa eno, I'll save a bit of this, a bit of that. And then you end up in a certain marriage.
And now you have to make it work.
And they tell you that's your destiny.
That
is your breakthrough. You're like, if I knew this is my breakthrough, I would have
done things differently.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Right? And I think that emphasizes the element of us to go back to be faithful stewards. Right? The God who is telling you to do things, obey him. The steps of a righteous man are ordered of God. You get?
You've painted such a vivid picture. I don't even know if I'll be able to get it out of my head. But maybe it's a good thing that it stays in my head. Maybe it's really a good thing that it actually stays in my head. I think you have painted such a graphic picture on the subject of purpose that we do not often think about or we don't even know when we're going into marriage or even thinking about marriage. And that is why we focus on the things that are frivolous. We look at someone now and he looks like a good person, a good guy, he has a good job, seems decent. Okay, he's born again, sometimes he'll fall here and there and we make concessions. And we get in too deep. And before we know it, now we're getting married. And then we start noticing other things and we try to fix them. And we can't fix them.
Yeah.
We really can't fix them. But also, on our side, before we get married, I feel is such a great opportunity to be better prepared. Because so it's easy to look at the other person. But I think the person you really need to be looking at is yourself.
Yeah. The first person you should be looking at.
The first person you need to actually look at is yourself. Because if you have everything sorted out in your life, then your choices might naturally follow.
Yeah.
But you'll also be alive to certain things. You won't focus on the things that are flimsy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can only see now.
Yeah. Yeah.
God sees the end of a thing from the beginning.
Yeah.
God sees who your spouse is going to become.
Yeah.
You might see now, but God sees who your spouse is going to become 2, 3, 5, 10 years from today.
Yeah.
So if you're plugged right into God and you're focusing on the things that really matter, and this goes both to men and women, then you stand a better chance. And even when the storms come, because the storms will come, you will weather them better. Because you will know beyond reasonable doubt that this is my destiny person. This is the person I was actually meant to do life with. But if you're not sure, when the storms come, you're like, you know what, God, I didn't sign up for this. I'm out of here. And yet all that could have been avoided.
And as you were speaking, one of the things I felt, the sadness. Do you know how many people have entered marriage without dealing with their own lust? Now, people enter marriage as though it's a place where they're going to park their lust. You see? So you are in the flesh and even enter marriage in the flesh. And then you wonder why you're dealing with certain issues. Yes. I had a gentleman talked about a couple, and their conflict was some sexual perversion. One desired, the other didn't. You see? And it is because you haven't dealt with your carnality and you're getting into something that is spiritual. You get?
And I think it's interesting that you talk about lust, because many times when we think about lust, we think about what comes top of mind is sexual lust. And rightly so. But there's other very subtle lust. The lust for money. The lust for fame. The lust for recognition. And I think there is prudence in examining, because it's very easy to think that, I don't have a lust issue. Because you're only thinking about the sexual lust.
I think why that is usually an issue is because when you think about one of the biggest things that affects marriages is infidelity. Right? I've had more couples breaking up for infidelity than finances. Though finances are also up there. But infidelity has a different thing because it hits different, right? And you start to see that that's what puts sexual lust on a top banner, right? But also I have this belief that carnality is like a sickness, and these different things are just symptoms. You see? That if you're not faithful in money, if you're not faithful in your sexuality, it's not isolated.
Bottom line is you are unfaithful.
Bottom line, you're carnal.
Okay. Okay.
You see? You're carnal. So you have an illness that has to be dealt with.
Otherwise, it will manifest in different ways.
Yes.
In one way or another, it will manifest.
Yes.
May the Lord help us. You can't do life without God. You certainly can't do marriage without God.
But there's something fascinating along the way when you were sharing that came to mind. I had someone who talked about the firm when they entered marriage, they believe they're not supposed to change. because God created them to be a certain way, right? So this idea that the character of person there is how God created them. And what's fascinating is the LGBT people use a similar narrative. Now, it's fascinating hearing a Christian use a similar narrative, right? And the problem with it, a certain gentleman explained and said, look, your flesh is sinful in its default state. We are sinners.
The default setting is sin.
Yes. So you don't glory in the way you are.
It's actually a very interesting perspective.
That the desire of a believer is transformation. Do not be conformed to the standard of this world, but be ye transformed
by the constant
by the renewing of your mind. You see? Now, but when you think about even who people are, I learned to not boast in who I am. Because who you are has been defined by different things. I once had a man say, I read, that a superiority complex harbors an inferiority complex. But also, an inferiority complex harbors a superiority complex. So, one's complex can affect their complex. Has it gotten complex?
Now you're making it more complex.
But it's the idea that there are many factors that shape us. It is like sculpturing. When you grow up in a home with two parents and your parents separate, that piece of separation is going to affect you.
Absolutely.
Something's going to be chipped off, right? When your parents suddenly have money and then they become broke, something's going to be chipped off. Now, that experience that life has shaped out of you, you ought not glory in it as though, look what God has done. No. And one of the things I found fundamental about marriage is an extra place of refinement. And I had a certain gentleman say that the first level of refinement is you getting married, because you're learning to be responsible for someone else other than yourself.
Yeah.
But then he said the other element is children. And he said how many parents are actually willing to die for their children. So they elevate a person to think of someone else beyond themselves. So all these pieces are to our refinement, right? So the narrative of...
that is who I am, or that is how I am.
That is who I am. I feel when one brings a report that I got married and I didn't change, for me, it's not a place of glory. It is a place that is sad. And ironically, some of the criticism about you is how you've changed.
I've changed.
You see? How you've changed. Right? So, to the critic, it's like she changed. She was an independent, confident woman.
Now she's
married.
Seemingly docile.
She's submitted. She's less...
not as loud.
It's not as loud.
And
And that is the problem. If you ask me and say, this Rukh-Shana and the Rukh-Shana before, who's the favorite? Right? I may just bring in a bit. The Rukh-Shana today deals with people differently.
Oh, yeah.
More gentle in dealing with people.
Oh, yeah.
You get?
Yeah.
The prior Rukh-Shana, I dare say, had a grain of arrogance.
I took no prisoners.
You see? And what's fascinating, that while that person may not have been the one who extends the light of Christ to people they encounter, but as the world likes that image. You see? The world liked that image.
Yeah,
That is a beautiful image.
There was a place for that image, and for the longest time, I gloried in it.
Yeah.
I gloried in it because there's a world that celebrates that person, right? Because that person gets certain things done.
Yes.
That person speaks their mind, and they really don't care what anyone else thinks.
Yeah.
That person has no fear or regard.
Yeah.
Not regard. That person respects authority, but they can challenge authority and not be mindful about how they challenge authority.
Yeah.
And that person, in a phrase, that person is not afraid of shaking tables when the tables must be shaken. And if the drinks on the table should spill on people, they don't really care. All they're looking at is the objective.
Yeah.
Does my objective make sense to me?
Yeah.
Yeah? I'm going to meet my objective, and that's it. And for the longest time, I took pride in it because I think it's because there are not that many people like that. There are not that many people who are very bold, you know. So I took pride in it. And in some shape or form, it got me getting things done, especially in the context of work. I can only speak in the context of work because that's where I lived the vast part of my life. Yeah. It got me delivering and getting things done. It didn't win me that many friends. Yeah. But guess what? This is how I dealt with the friend situation. Yeah. My mantra was, I don't go to a place of work to make friends. Yeah. I'm here to get a job done. Yeah. As long as I get the job done, I'm good. Yeah. So the fact that I didn't have that many friends wasn't an issue because at the back of my mind, I had a reinforcing principle of don't make friends in the workplace. Yeah. Once in a while, I'd make one friend and I'd be okay with that. Yeah. But as time went on, and this was like towards the tail end of a certain part of my career, I started feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. I was like, wait a minute, this can't be right. Yeah. I cannot have the same report from the majority of people. They all can't be wrong, and I'm the only one who's right. Yeah. You know, I can't make people feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Then I started feeling uncomfortable about it. Yeah. I actually started feeling uncomfortable about it, but I also recognized where that change started. Yeah. That was after I encountered you. Mm. So that was like in my last 1 year in the bank, for example. Yeah. And I was like, no, this is not right. Yeah. People can't be tiptoeing around me and walking on eggshells around me. Of course, unknown to me at that point in time is that the same report that people had out there was the same report my family had, except my family wasn't going to tell me. You know, they had sort of, I think, made peace with, this is how she is. Yeah. We live, let's let her be. Yeah. But when I started feeling uncomfortable about it, I was like, no, something is not right. Now, of course, God in his infinite wisdom, I get married, and then really, the best place for refinement is marriage. Yeah. You know? So slowly, things start chipping away. It wasn't easy, but I started enjoying the different versions, the different iterations that I was seeing. Of course, it's difficult for people to appreciate that, you know, and I think I've gotten to a place where I'm like, you know what, it's okay if they don't understand, but I really hope they do understand, but it's okay if they don't. Yeah. But I like me. I like the version that I'm seeing. Yeah. It's easier to breathe. I don't have to deal with migraines. I don't have to deal with palpitations. I am healthier. You know, I like it when I have conversations with people and their eyes light up. You know, because the kind of conversations you have when you're in a certain state are different from the kind of conversations you have when you are in the other state. Yeah. The other state was the kind of state where, and it's even sad because then when I'd have conversations with people and the knowledge I'm sharing is really unto pushing them in a certain direction. Yeah. You need to be firm. Yeah. You know, you can't let people walk over you. People are always going to be cutting corners, so your job is to do X, Y, Z. Yeah. And that's a lot of the advice that I was churning out. Yeah. But now it's more grace.
And as you're speaking, a couple of things come to mind. One, we hosted a couple of friends here recently.
Yeah.
And one said something that was quite insightful. And he said, strengths and weaknesses are all the same coin. That strengths are like a coin. That face is strengths, but it has another face to it. The strengths are not without an extra face.
Yes.
Right? So the person people saw and liked, maybe that challenged them to be confident, they forgot the other side of it all.
That comes with that. Yeah.
I don't know about it, but it could have been the reason why it took you longer to get married.
Very, 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 very
You see?
likely.
Of course,
among other things.
Perhaps God used it well for this work here and the testimony that comes of it.
Romans 8:28.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
But these people were saying she changed, she lost the best version of herself. Like, where were you when she wasn't getting married? Where were you when they're making fun of her in the tabloids? So there you didn't, all you cared about is the part that you liked. And this is what's funny. This is what's funny. When you do things that risk your life, people will celebrate you, but because they're not the one bearing the cost of it.
Yeah, the cost of it.
You see? But also, another dimension of it, Paul says we are in this world, but we're not of this world. Now, there's a character that you need to compete in this world.
Yep.
But there's a character of one who is in the kingdom of God. We do not pursue things like the world does. Yes.
We shouldn't.
We shouldn't.
Yeah.
You see, there are people who feel you need to fight and flex your way
to be aggressive.
Yes. Right? I'm like, no. Promotions come from neither east nor west, but from God Almighty. Right? Now, my character is the one that looks to trust in God.
Yeah.
You see? And my influence on a person would be in that regard.
True.
And what actually, you talk about the change that happened when you met me, was a change to start to look to God. Right?
Absolutely.
Yes, look to God. Is that the way you're conducting yourself, does it bring glory to God? Does God happy when he sees you do that?
Yeah.
You see? But at the same time, that element as well as a boldness, which also has its place. You see? And I think the art of maturity is to have a certain strength, but to know how to wield it.
Yes.
The power is to know how to wield it. You see, Vashti had a certain power. And I think because of the power Vashti had, is why the king would call on her and she refuses.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't the first time Vashti did this.
It's very likely that it wasn't.
Yeah. But she overplayed her hand. So maturity is actually the ability to know, yes, I possess this power, but I need to know where I wield it, where to apply it,
And
where to hold it back. And that is the element of life. Life is the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The power of life is in the balance. It is the place of maturity. And when you find older people, a certain gentleman said, the late Charlie Munger, he said, the young men know the rules, the old men know the exceptions. Is to know how to conduct yourself one way, but don't understand where you go contrary.
Yeah.
You see? So it is the place of how you balance things. So someone tells you, but you said we don't go there. Yes. But there are moments where you go there.
You need to know when you need to go
Thank
there.
you.
Yeah.
And that is the place of maturity.
Yeah.
That's the place of wisdom. You see? So the place when you're not mature, you are so fixed to your way. Yes, it is good that you have a strong conviction and you don't change. But no, the wisdom teaches people to be humble. Yes. Wisdom and maturity allows people to know where they can hold themselves back. You can be the one who speaks. No, people know me. For me, I speak. I speak by wisdom.
You also need to know when to be silent.
Know when to be silent. Don't stop speaking, but know when to be silent.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep. A lot of things to reflect on.
I've loved this conversation.
As I missed these conversations.
Yes.
I sort of missed these conversations on camera. Of course, we have a lot of these conversations off camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of missed. So, yeah.
And I think our marriage missed them as well.
Oh, yes, it did.
I actually noticed somewhere.
Going by the undercurrents.
Yes,
in the last couple of days.
Going by undercurrents.
Something was
I
missing.
realized while these conversations happen to be on a podcast, but they force us to sit down and have conversations without distractions for over an hour. And I think that's the power of it all. I'll take it deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Many people do not even have an hour with God undistracted.
Yeah, it's hard.
So they wonder why their intimacy with God is on a certain level. They don't know how to commune with God for over an hour undistracted. But also it's the same thing between husbands and wives. They cannot commune together for an hour undistracted. And I think why people may look at us and say, why did this guy start a podcast in the second year of marriage? What do they have to speak? But unknown to them, that insight of us sitting down and having a lengthy conversation that is candid and scripted may have done much more for our marriage than anything else.
I totally
agree. So, and I think
I totally agree.
The power of it all, I think, is to ensure that we actually have more of these conversations. Of course, we tend to have them over meals. We talk at length. But I think this sort of zone into faith and marriage.
Yeah.
Right? I think that focusing on marriage, to talk about our marriage. Because you find couples having things like date nights and stuff. But then, what are they talking about?
Good question.
Yes, it's not about that you're meeting. It's about what are you talking about when you meet, right? And I think this podcast is
it's the equivalent of our date night, except it's public.
I can't use the word date night; it's too cliche. I would water down our communion.
True.
And this is our fellowship.
Yeah,
this is our fellowship.
I think we recently met someone, a gentleman who actually shared that him and his wife have these sessions. I think, was it weekly or every 2 weeks?
Yes,
I think it was weekly.
Yes.
And they have proper retrospectives.
Yes.
It wasn't a date night. I forget the name.
Pastor Ivan.
Yes, Pastor Ivan. Yeah. I forget the term that he used.
Yeah.
But I found it so interesting.
Yes.
It's basically like, it's like doing an appraisal, checking in, doing a retrospective of this past week. How have I done in this area? And the other, and what can I improve? And they're talking. And likewise, the wife, okay, this is where you've done this, and this is how we can get better. I thought that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Because then you're not allowing things to build up.
Yeah.
You're able to even give each other feedback in an environment that is where you both know you're actually receptive to receiving the feedback. And because it is so frequent, it's not going to be swept under the rug, but also because you're preparing for this engagement, you have an opportunity to organize your thoughts and your words and lace them with grace.
But the power, distinctness of this one, it's actually unscripted.
Yes, it's unscripted.
See, again, I feel you want to have that question unscripted. Right?
Yeah, I think the reason why sometimes people have structure
You're the one who said earlier on that if this was unscripted, certain weaknesses would not come out.
If it was scripted.
It was scripted.
Yes. It would
So
be
unscripted
difficult.
allows certain vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean, I go back and I listen. I'm like, what, did I actually just say that? You know? But because I put it out there, then I'm also committed to working on it and allowing for God to help me work on it, you know? Yeah, because then there are witnesses.
Yeah.
You know, there are witnesses. And it's important to actually have witnesses. But I am thankful. And I'm thankful we've had this one.
Yes.
It's been so long. It feels
This
like such
has
a
been
long
unscripted
time.
and unplanned.
Unplanned, unscripted, yes, totally out of. Okay, unscripted is not out of character, but unplanned, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm glad we've had it because the last few days have been a bit uncomfortable. Really been a bit uncomfortable. So I'm excited about the next couple of hours and days.
Amen.
Yes. You're so far away.
Pleasure. Thank you.